You train hard, you add weights to the bar, and you feel strong, almost bulletproof. However, the gym only makes you strong in one position, braced with a neutral spine. But life doesn't load you that way. It loads you twisted, rounded, off balance, and normally tired. That's where the crack in your foundation lives. Not where you're strong, but where you never trained. And when something finally tests it, that's where you're going to break. It won't happen in the gym. It will happen during moving something like an AC unit or twisting under load that your workout program never prepared you for. Hi, my name is Seth. At a young age, I trained extremely hard as a bodybuilder. I felt superhuman. However, after getting in a car accident, it exposed cracks in my foundation that I didn't even know were there. The hardest part about my recovery wasn't the injury, it was filling the gaps in my training. So here's what we're gonna do: pull up the last month of your training or think back on the past, because there are 4 positions that your body breaks in, and we're going to count and add up how many exercises and sets you gave to each one of them. That number is where the crack is, because you're not as strong as your best lift. You're only as strong as your worst position. Rotation under load is the first place you break, because it is the place that you train the least but use the most in the real world. Think about how you get injured. Normally, it's by grabbing something heavy off the top shelf and twisting, or you're twisting something heavy trying to get through the doorway, or you're in a small storage space where you're crunched over and rotating, trying to get something out of that area. You're always rotating. And this is where you actually use the strength that you developed in the gym in the real world. You don't just pick something up and then drop it like you would a deadlift, but rather you pick something up, you rotate, and you carry it. So rotation is the most used in the functionality of your life, but you don't train it in the big lifts such as the squat, the deadlift. All these are forward facing, and you're lifting like a robot within the same stance. However, in life, you're going to be not thinking about grabbing something and moving it, but you're going to just grab it and move it. But when you're deadlifting, you're going to try to set yourself up in the perfect stance before you even pick it up and move it. They are completely different. So if you're not training rotation in your workouts, then you're just getting weaker and weaker there. But in real life, that is where the crack in your foundation lives, and that's where you're going to break and get injured. So think about the last month of your training and how many times, exercises and sets, were you actually doing with rotation? Rotation with a load, not just with your body weight or by stretching, but while actually having weight. And chances are, if you're like most people, it's either 0 or close to it. And write that down and keep it, because we're going to add up these in the end, because you're only as strong as your worst position. Your body becomes what it repeatedly does, for better or for worse. So if you only train the brace position, then your crack becomes rotation. The second position is the rounded spine under load, the position you have been taught to fear probably your whole life, because for years coaches have told many people to never load your spine rounded. Always brace with the neutral spine and a tight core. While this is true when you are doing your max deadlift or squat, this is not the case in the real world. There's no way avoiding it if you're picking up a couch or a dresser or just installing your AC. You're going to round your shoulders, so you're going to have a rounded spine. But if you never train in this area, that is where the crack in your foundation is going to live. And then that is where you're going to get injured, because you are weak there. This is where my weak point was, because after being in a car accident, my nervous system locked down that area in my mid back, and it would not let it move. I trained for years with a neutral brace spine, deadlifting, squatting, but I never trained with the rounded spine. So even a former bodybuilder who was my chiropractor couldn't even adjust this area because it was so stiff. It took me years to finally recorrect that because of the gap that I had in my training. And if you have been not training this area as well, it doesn't matter how much weight you can lift with your legs, that becomes completely irrelevant, and you become even a greater gap if you have not been training the rounded spine position, because your structural integrity is not about how much weight you can lift. It's about how much weight you can lift in a controlled manner in all different positions. So here's what we're going to do. Go ahead and review the last month of your training and count off how many exercises and sets you did with a controlled rounded spine. If you're like most people, that's probably also 0. But remember, if you don't fix this area, that is where you're going to break. The third position is side loading and anti-rotation. Most gym movements are forward facing, but life is not. You are carrying a child in one arm and you have to maintain a neutral spine. Many people that I have seen carrying a child, they have no way to brace their spine, so they're carrying their child and bending their spine sideways. However, even when you're carrying a bag, you're going to be carrying it with one hand. And if you are carrying two things with two hands, then many times you have more weight in one hand than the other. And when you bend over to pick something up, many times you're also twisting and rotating at the same time. So these are the movements that most people do not train in the gym, but that is where it's going to fail if you never train for it. So add up, how many times are you actually doing things such as suitcase carries and you're bracing that neutral spine while loading the side, or are doing exercises that are anti-rotation, or any type of slow controlled side bending? Because even when you are side bending, you need to have control in your spine, or that is where an injury is likely to occur. The pattern that you never load becomes a pattern that fails first. The fourth position is overhead and loaded carries. When you are carrying something such as a box, that weight is directly in front of you, not over the center of your gravity like the barbell doing a back squat. So that the spine positioning is different. Also, when you are carrying something, your spine is rocking side to side, so you have to stabilize it. You're moving your feet up and down and upstairs or uneven ground, where when you're deadlifting, you are in a neutral area where the ground is completely flat every single time. So if you are not training this area, that's where weakness and your cracks are going to form. And also, when you put something on the top shelf or carry something overhead, your spine and how that arranges for your stability completely changes. So these are all extremely important to train. Have you done farmer's carries, a keg carry, or a wheelbarrow push or wheelbarrow pull, any type of sled work where you're pushing or pulling the sled? Add them all up. Finally, total up the total number of exercises and sets that you have done for these 4 positions, and total up the total amount of exercises and sets that you did in your entire workouts in the last 30 days, and compare them. How many out of the total were you actually doing in these 4 positions? And if it is low, then that shows you that this is where the cracks in your foundation is. It is not about pass or fail. It's about inspecting your foundation to figure out where the cracks are and filling those gaps before they end up breaking and causing an injury. If you're like most people, you don't just have these cracks in your foundation, but you have others. And structural integrity is a critical piece if you want to continue getting stronger and not having any setbacks from injuries. I have built something that can help you find the others. It's called the Iron Body Assessment. It'll walk you through and help you find other weak links that you may have been overlooking so that you can fill them. But it doesn't just help you prevent injury, it actually will help you increase in performance and your overall enjoyment in the rest of your life. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit subscribe and join us on this journey to build a body of iron and become unbreakable.